I knew Tucker years ago. Tucker's a very intelligent man. He knows exactly what he's doing. And sadly, what he's doing is extremely cynical. He knows what he's saying is not true.
Well,
He knows it's not. But it is a business model that is working for him.
so, Tom, thank you for taking the time. This is Tom Giovanetti. He's the president of the Institute for Policy Innovation in Texas. It's based here. It's a public policy organization and institute as a think tank. But most importantly, you're not only the president, but you are a prolific speaker and writer. And the public knows you for that. And we have just done a podcast together. So you have your weekly podcast or...
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We have been doing for about 4 years a weekly podcast. In fact, we have two podcasts. We have our weekly podcast, the Institute for Policy Innovation podcast. And that we try to comment on current issues, current political issues and policy issues in the United States. But then we have another podcast that I actually like a lot better, and that is our Policy Basics podcast. And the idea of our Policy Basics podcast is to build an audio reference library on basic policy issues. And it's not bound in time. It's not bound to anything that's being talked about right now. And we want to get to the point where if you just want give me 20 minutes of the free market limited government take on some policy issue, that you'll be able to find an IPI Policy Basics episode and listen to it. Maybe you're running for office, maybe you're a candidate, maybe you're just trying to learn about things. So for instance, what's the free market limited government position on, internet regulation, or social media regulation or something like that. And so right now we've got about 40 episodes of that podcast.
So where would we be able to download those?
You can find that on iTunes or Spotify or really any major podcast platform, as well as our own website.
Of course, at IPI.
Yeah. But the truth is our website is not the easiest way to access it. The easiest way to access it is on a major podcast platform.
Excellent. So, but you also do tweet a lot or X a lot. Or
yes, people have mentioned that to me before.
Oh, really? Am I not the first one? But unlike many center-right groups, we at Institute of Policy Innovation have not abandoned our optimistic, Reaganite, pro-market, limited government, constitutional, classical, liberal, pro-innovation approach. We still love America more than Hungary.
Yeah, and that's a dig. That's in there on purpose, and that's a dig because so many of our fellow organizations on the center right, and so many voters and activists on the center right, have really gone off in a direction that is contrary to the conservatism that I grew up with.
Yeah.
I became a conservative in high school sitting at the breakfast table listening to Ronald Reagan's radio broadcasts. And every morning before school, I'd be sitting there eating my Pop-Tart and listening to Ronald Reagan on the radio. And Ronald Reagan had a sensible explanation for the problems that were going on in the world. And he said, government is the problem, not the solution. For Ronald Reagan, the solution was private sector individuals making their own choices, running their own lives, businesses being allowed to innovate and create and try to please their customers. Reagan said that the welfare state harmed individuals.
Yeah.
It had a negative derogatory effect on character, on the American character, which Reagan saw as rugged individualism and individual responsibility. And Reagan felt that the welfare state corroded that. And and sometimes I have trouble telling the story without getting emotional, but I grew up in a poor family, in a lower middle class family. And when I was 16, I got a job working at a grocery store bagging groceries. And my mother would come in, and she would have a grocery list, and she would be on a tight budget. And sometimes she would get to the checkout counter, and it would total up too much and she'd have to put things back. And she bought the store brand. She didn't buy the most expensive products. And I'm there working, in the grocery store checking her out. And then the next customer would come along and they would have their carts just overflowing and bulging with the best of everything and steaks and roasts and all this sort of stuff. And then when time came to pay, they didn't pull out their wallet. They pulled out this coupon book.
Oh, no.
They pulled out this book of coupons.
Okay. So what does this tell us?
And what I came to understand was that these were people who were on welfare and they were on food stamps. And it was clear to me, even as a high school boy, that when government was buying your food for you, it changed the incentives.
And the behavior.
The behavior. And I couldn't help but notice that in many cases, the people who were paying for their groceries with food stamps were the rudest customers. Mm-hmm. They didn't tip. And as a high school boy working in the grocery store, tips were a big deal.
Yeah.
And I could just tell something was wrong. And then one day I'm sitting around the breakfast table and Ronald Reagan starts talking about welfare queens and the deleterious effect that the welfare state has on personal character. And I had seen this with my own eyes. I had just never heard anyone explain it to me before. So that Reaganite conservatism, individual responsibility, limited government, a very limited welfare state, an emphasis on hard work and opportunity, providing Americans with opportunity, not guarantees, but opportunities, really resounded with me. And the Reagan Revolution in the 1980s created decades of American strong economic growth, American global competitiveness, increases in family income, increases in personal wealth. All sorts of innovation, technological innovation came spewing out of that from the United States, and it worked. That approach works. And so that is my conservatism. And unfortunately, today on the center right, too many people are departing from that.
Yeah,
they call that zombie Reaganism, and they mock the idea of limited government and free markets. And so
achievement.
Exactly, yes. And so that's why, I put in that bio, we still love America more than Hungary, because you've got a lot of these new right conservatives who are thinking, the American model just doesn't work. We really need to go with this nationalist, big government, using the power of government to force your preferred solutions on the population. Yeah. And to me, this is not conservatism.
Well, and it's populist.
It is populist. It's populist and it's authoritarian. And it doesn't have a proven track record of improving people's lives. It just really doesn't. And so I think it's a serious mistake. I think that the American conservative movement right now is at a low point.
Yeah,
it's at a low point. And, I sort of view myself as having devoted my career to the conservative movement, and I hate to see it going off the rails toward the end of my career. So,
well, no. There is no way that we will not altogether fight that. I
Absolutely.
think freedom is too important. It's the most important good that we have in our lives, and that we need to constantly defend it. And we will not allow to lose it.
That's exactly right. And that's why we so enjoy partnering with you, with like-minded folks. But we at IPI are devoted to preserving, to the degree that we can, and arguing for the conservatism, the limited government conservatism, classical liberalism, that has been a force for good more than anything else in human history. Yeah. And we don't see any compelling arguments to toss it out the window.
Well, I'm glad you pointed this out because, again, some conservatives experience infatuation with Hungary these days.
Yes.
And maybe even with Russia.
Yes.
And, Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin and lauded the city of Moscow. So Carlson said the following: the city of Moscow was so much nicer than any city in my country. And then he additionally said Moscow was much cleaner and prettier aesthetically than any city in the United States. What explains this conservative infatuation with Budapest and Moscow?
I knew Tucker years ago. Tucker's a very intelligent man. He knows exactly what he's doing. And sadly, what he's doing is extremely cynical. Mm-hmm. He knows what he's saying is not true. Well, he knows it's not. but it is a business model that is working for him. And it's an extremely cynical thing to do. But Tucker is only, I can't really blame people like Tucker. I can't really blame Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump was sort of the catalyst that changed a lot of these things, because we are still a democracy. And a significant portion of the Republican Party has eagerly embraced this populism and Trumpism. Trump didn't force anybody to vote for him.
No.
Trump didn't force anybody to nominate him. We are still a democracy. And in a democracy, people get, by and large, they get what they want. And so there are these underlying dynamics in the American economy and among the American people right now, where most American voters do not want their elected representatives to roll up their sleeves, sit across the table from each other, and do the hard work of compromising and legislating. That is not what they want them to do. They want them to fight.
Okay.
They see Republicans see Democrats as evil. Democrats see Republicans as evil. And, if somebody's evil, then it would be wrong to compromise with them and work with them, right? And so we have a highly polarized environment right now where Democrats are convinced that Republicans are trying to destroy the country, and Republicans are convinced that Democrats are trying to destroy the country. And so both fighters have sort of retreated to their corners. And so our major problems are going unresolved. We have a serious immigration and border crisis. We have a very serious entitlements crisis where our pension systems within a very few years are going to be in the red and are going to be spending more money faster than it's coming in. We know this. No one is ignorant of this. But no one is willing to sit down and try to solve the problem because solving problems requires compromise.
Well, compromise, braveness.
Yes.
And of course, the art of disputes and negotiations.
Right. See, I'm so glad you used the word negotiation, because I think the word compromise in American politics has become a negative term. Yeah. People think it's wrong. It's wrong to compromise. Well, all compromise means is negotiation.
Yeah.
I mean, no two parties have ever entered into a contract on anything without compromise and negotiation. The party on the other side of the contract probably wants you to pay more than you want to pay, right? They probably want to give you less than you want to receive, but you sit down and you negotiate, you compromise, and if you can come to an agreement,
you shake hands.
And you're both better off. Yeah. You're both enriched,
you create
right?
added value.
Yes.
This is what the Austrian school tells
us
all
exactly.
the time.
But it requires negotiation and compromise.
Yes.
And our system, our American political system, is designed, it requires compromise. For you to get something, you have to give something up.
And also tolerance. Yeah,
well, this is very, very important, because the fundamental, and forgive me because I could talk about this for an extended amount of time.
Go ahead.
The fundamental American distinctive is that we are not to be a ruled people. We are not to be a ruled people. We are going to govern ourselves. So the whole American founding is a reaction against the idea of being ruled, okay? Now, you can be ruled by a king, but you can also be ruled by an out-of-control judicial branch that imposes its will on the people. But you can also be ruled by your fellow citizens. And so the founders were very concerned about this. The founders did not want a system where 51% of the people could run roughshod over 48% of the people. And so that's why we have divided government. That's why we have separate branches of government. That's why we have checks and balances, so that 51% of the people cannot rule over 48% of the people. But right now in American politics, both sides want to rule over the other. Republicans want to be able to force their will on Democrats, and Democrats want to be able to force their will on Republicans. And that is fundamentally un-American.
So they should go back to the principles and to the Constitution and maybe reread the documents.
Your people who disagree with you politically are still Americans. and they still deserve representation just as much as you do. They're not illegitimate. Just because they disagree with you, they're not illegitimate. And so they deserve a seat at the table. They deserve representation. And the way you solve these problems is not by hoping you get gigantic majorities so that you can run roughshod over the people who disagree with you. That just doesn't happen in American politics anymore. I mean, the typical Republican, I think what they want is to have a 66-seat majority in the Senate and a 50-seat majority in the House so that they can run roughshod over Democrats.
Yeah.
That is not American. That's not American. That's the desire to rule over those who disagree with you. And Americans, we're not supposed to be a ruled people. We are fundamentally supposed to be a self-governing people. And I don't want to be ruled by a king, and I don't want to be ruled by a judge, but I also don't want to be ruled by a majority of my fellow Americans. I don't want them to be able to impose their will on me. And so the solution to this is compromise and negotiation. And nobody gets everything that they want, but we come together and we try to solve problems. But that is not happening in American politics today because people have forgotten this idea that self-government requires negotiation and compromise. Self-government is not imposing your will on your fellow Americans. Self-government is negotiation and compromise.
Well, I'm glad you point that out because, after all, we all believe in individual freedom and entrepreneurial freedom. And if we don't run this in a system where the rule of law is based, but only laws of rules of law, the rule of law, but laws of rules.
Yes.
Then we end up nowhere. So let's shift gears for a little bit again, and let's go back to what you already mentioned with regards to the slogan that Trump used, "Let's make America great again."
Sure.
Well, he paraphrased, actually, he stole it from Reagan.
Yes.
But Reagan had a total different America in mind. You were just explaining what it means for the individual and for why you don't want to be governed by X, Y, Z. But what does this mean with regards to, say, foreign trade, to economy, to the well-being of the individuals? Is this... it's more or less, closing the borders and not trading, not dividing labor, not believing in globalization.
Right.
Will this make America really great again?
So when Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1979, the late 1970s were a real low point in America. Inflation was out of control. Mortgage rates were 17 and 18%. Unemployment was high. We had energy shortages. We had people waiting in line
for gas
to buy gasoline and just hoping that they wouldn't run out of gas before their time came in line. We had a Jimmy Carter in the White House who just seemed utterly overwhelmed by the job. It just wasn't up to the job. We had hostages in Iran, which was a deep shame to the country. And when Carter finally, as a result of political pressure, tried to mount a rescue operation, the helicopters crashed in the desert and it was an embarrassing disaster. When America is at a low point like that, when people literally are thinking, boy, our better days are behind us, when Reagan comes along and says, let's make America great again.
That's a difference.
In that context, heck yes, and this is why Ronald Reagan was so broadly embraced by the American people, particularly in his re-election campaign in 1984, when he won 49 of 50 states for re-election. When we think about recent election nights in the U.S. where you're counting single-digit like electoral college votes, it's hard to imagine that it wasn't that long ago that somebody won 49 out of 50 states, right?
Well,
So make America great again was an appropriate message at that time. Okay, for Donald Trump, there was this assumption that America is in lousy shape And America was not in lousy shape in 2016. Now, for many of us, we did not support a lot of the agenda of the Obama administration.
Yeah.
But America was not in lousy shape. It was not in a crisis. And so Trump's context for let's make America great again is more of a zero-sum kind of thinking, where I think what he really meant is let's make America win again.
Yeah.
Okay?
On the international...
Yes. And in Trump's view, America was losing because other countries were doing okay.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the Chinese economy was growing, because the Indian economy was growing, because the Pacific Rim was growing. And in his view, because we had trade deficits with many of those countries, that meant we were losing.
Which is total nonsense.
Which is total nonsense. Trade deficits are an utterly unimportant concept.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it's crazy to even talk about trade between countries because countries don't trade.
No.
People
it's
trade.
Individuals
People trade.
Yeah.
Countries don't trade.
Yeah.
The United States does not trade with Canada. No. Americans trade with Canadians. But the U.S. government does not trade with the Canadian government. I mean, maybe arms sales, or something like that. But it doesn't even make sense to talk about trade between countries because countries don't trade. People trade. Okay.
Then we are back to the concept of individualism.
Exactly.
Where we started our conversation.
Right.
And this is why it is so important.
So when you start getting involved in trying to control trade between countries, what you're really doing is controlling trade between individuals. Yeah. And you're putting restrictions on it. And, I have often used the illustration, and I heard it used again today, that I have a 100% trade deficit with the grocery store.
Yeah.
They get my money and I get goods.
Perfect.
But it doesn't matter.
But you both win.
We're both happy. It doesn't matter. If I buy $85 worth of groceries, I've got $85 worth of goods and they've got $85 worth of currency. It's an equal exchange and we're both happy. But it's 100% trade deficit. Yep. It makes no sense. The problem is this is a difficult concept to communicate to people.
Exactly.
And so people do assume that there's something wrong if we have a trade deficit with China or Brazil. But what Trump did is he translated this for people into we are suckers.
Yeah.
Somehow, now of course this is mathematically impossible. You can't have a trade surplus with every other country.
No.
It's mathematically impossible, right? But yet somehow this message really resounded with a lot of people.
Because this is why economic literacy is so important.
Yes, exactly.
We need to explain things constantly.
Exactly.
And
most high school students never take anything that touches on economics, much less an economics class. Most of them don't take a basic civics class.
Yeah.
It's astonishing how many of the most vociferous activists, those who are like the most angry and the most engaged, are very often the ones who least understand. They don't even understand that senators serve 6-year terms and members of the House serve 2-year terms.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even know things like that. They don't understand that every member of Congress is up for re-election every 2 years, right? This is basic stuff. And some of the most angry activists in politics, particularly Republican politics, they have no base of understanding of civics or economics. Yeah. They're just angry.
Yeah,
they're just really angry. And populism gives voice to the angry, and it gives voice to those who feel that they are overlooked.
Yeah. But we need reason in all those conversations.
Exactly.
I'm so thankful for all the work that IPI is doing, that you are explaining things on a very, constantly explaining things in a very simple way how to improve the situation.
Well, we try because the only way because we are a democracy.
Yeah.
And so the only way we're going to get better results from our politics is if active, informed citizens have better information. And so that's our goal, is to try to give active, informed citizens, legislators and legislative staff, policymakers and opinion leaders, to give them good information and to give them good arguments. Well, and long term, That is the solution, is for the voters and the population to be better informed.
And to guarantee by that freedom and democracy.
Exactly.
Well,
Only an informed people can protect their own liberty.
Well, thank you very much. This was Tom Giovanetti. Thank you very much for joining me and for doing this great work. And I'm looking forward to further collaboration, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Barbara.